During the Cold War, all eyes were on America's race to the moon. But at the exact same time, the Soviet Union was deep into its own space race, planning what you can only really call a series of suicide missions. Their target? Our mysterious, cloud-covered neighbor, Venus. This is the incredible story of their ambition, the terrifying things they discovered, and the answer to a mystery that's lingered for decades. Why, after coming so close, did they just give up on Venus forever?
Right, let's just get straight to it. Think about this. The Soviets poured unimaginable amounts of money and brain power into conquering Venus, sending probe after probe after probe. And then, poof, they just stopped. The reason why is all wrapped up in what they actually found there. A truth so completely horrifying, it didn't just end their program, it changed everything we thought we knew about that planet.
So, picture the 1960s and 70s. The space race is in full swing. America makes this huge public declaration. We're putting a man on the moon. The Soviets, not wanting to be outdone, needed their own spectacular win, so they pivoted. They turned their gaze to Venus. The goal became pretty clear. If America wants the moon, we'll be the first to land on another planet entirely.
And what's so fascinating is that back then, a lot of scientists really thought Venus could be Earth's twin. I mean, it's a similar size, not too far off in its orbit, but it was completely hidden by this thick layer of clouds. It was a total mystery box. For all anyone knew, under those clouds, there could have been lush jungles, maybe even oceans. Finding that would have been an even bigger deal than landing on the moon. But here's the thing. Getting to Venus was one thing, but actually figuring out what was under those clouds, that turned out to be unbelievably hard. The Soviets' first attempts were just a brutal, relentless string of failures. Each one was a lesson, sure, but a lesson learned in the absolute harshest way imaginable. The Soviets had this policy, right? They wouldn't announce a mission to the world unless it was a success. Because of this, a lot of these early attempts are now called ghost missions. I mean, their very first probe didn't even make it out of Earth's orbit. Venera 1 and 2, they just went completely silent out in the middle of deep space. And Venera 3, well, it technically made history. It was the first man-made object to hit another planet. But it was just a dead crash. It's an absolutely nothing back. With Venera 4, they finally got a probe to enter the Venusian atmosphere. Success, right? Well, as it was descending, the signal just stopped. It wasn't a crash. The probe was destroyed in midair. The little data it sent back before it died gave them their first terrifying clue. The atmosphere on Venus was so incredibly dense, so powerful, that it was literally crushing their probes like empty soda cans. This realization was a massive turning point. The Soviets understood they weren't just exploring a planet. They were trying to break into a fortress. So they completely changed their strategy. For their next big shot, Venera 7, they stripped out a lot of the delicate science gear and focused on pure brute strength. They basically built a space tank, and it had one single mission: just survive. And the landing was absolute chaos. The parachute tore on the way down, so it slammed into the surface, it toppled over and landed upside down with its main antenna pointing uselessly at the ground. It looked like another disaster. But, and this is just sheer genius, the scientists on the ground managed to pick up an impossibly faint signal. For 23 agonizing minutes, that broken little probe whispered what it was experiencing all the way back to Earth. So, what did it say? The very first piece of data from the surface of Venus was the temperature, 465 degrees Celsius. That's hot enough to melt lead. To put that in perspective, it's more than double the maximum heat of your oven at home. Then came the pressure reading. They figured out the atmospheric pressure on the surface was 90 times greater than it is here on Earth. The only way you could feel that kind of pressure would be to dive almost a full kilometer. That's about 3,000 feet, straight down into the ocean. So that's why the early probes were being crushed. And just when you think it can't get worse, there was one more horrifying discovery. As the probe was falling, they noticed its radio signal was shifting, kind of like how an ambulance siren changes pitch when it drives past you. That's the Doppler effect, and it could only mean one thing. The probe was being shoved sideways by incredible winds. Venus wasn't just hot and crushing, it was a planet trapped in a permanent, violent hurricane. Okay, so now they knew how to survive. For a few minutes anyway, but that opened up an even bigger challenge. Could they actually see and hear this alien hellscape? This meant a whole new generation of landers, way more advanced and way more ambitious.
And on October 22nd, 1975, they did it. This was a truly monumental moment for all of humanity. Venera 9 sent back the very first picture ever taken from the surface of another world. And what it showed was just stunning. It wasn't some sandy desert like Mars. It was this grim, alien landscape of sharp, broken rocks, all lit by a gloomy, oppressive orange sky. But even their successes were just plagued by this ridiculous bad luck. The plan was to get these amazing 360-degree panoramas using 2 cameras. But on mission after mission, the lens caps, these simple little spring-loaded covers, they just failed to pop off. Venera 9 and 10 each managed to get 1 picture. But Venera 11 and 12, this is heartbreaking. They survived on the surface for almost 2 hours, but sent back nothing. Just darkness. Both of their lens caps got stuck. And this next story is just the perfect tragicomedic example of their luck. Venera 14 had this spring-loaded arm that was supposed to pop out and test how hard the soil was. But when it deployed, the lens cap that had just been ejected from the camera landed in the exact spot the arm was about to hit. So this multi-million-dollar instrument, designed to test the geology of another planet, ended up measuring the hardness of its own lens cap. You just can't make this stuff up. But Venera 13 was a spectacular success. It sent back the first real color photos showing that eerie orange sky and rocky brown ground. It had a microphone that recorded the first ever sounds from another planet. You could hear the howling wind and what scientists think was distant thunder. A drill even found evidence of seismic activity, Venus quakes shaking the planet. It was incredible. For the first time, we had a full sensory experience of this alien world. So, they had seen the surface, they'd heard it, they'd touched it, but one huge question was still hanging out there. What did the rest of the planet look like under those clouds? To figure that out, the Soviets launched their final and most ambitious missions. The goal wasn't to land anymore. It was to map the entire inferno from orbit. And this brings us right back to that original question. Why didn't they ever go back? Well, this right here is the final verdict. The combined discoveries from the entire Venera program painted a complete, terrifying picture of a planet that actively tries to destroy anything that comes near it. You've got extreme heat and pressure, toxic clouds of sulfuric acid, a dark and treacherous surface, and constant violent winds. You have to hand it to them, though. The Soviets' incredible persistence absolutely paid off. They sent so many probes, failures, and successes that for a long time, people in the space community just called Venus the Soviet planet. They had answered the ancient question of what lay beneath the clouds. They just really, really didn't like the answer they found. In the end, the Venera program was both this monumental triumph and a terrifying revelation. It solved one of the biggest mysteries in our solar system, but it replaced that mystery with a stark warning. The Soviets proved that humanity could get to Venus, but they also proved exactly why you would never, ever want to stay. The question now is, knowing what we know, who would be brave enough, or maybe foolish enough, to even try again?